We begin in Greenbrier County. Reported financial troubles are shining a light on the Greenbrier Resort once again. The property management company that has assumed the debt for America's Resort isn't wasting time about collecting what's owed on that property. Our Ben Schwartz, evening anchor, reports.
This legal ad in Lewisburg's West Virginia Daily News lists the Greenbrier Resort for sale. It goes on to say the property is set for public auction in front of the Greenbrier County Courthouse on August 27th. That's how Jim Justice obtained the resort in 2009. This is video taken shortly after he took the reins and introduced himself to his new workforce. Justice purchased the Greenbrier when the previous owner, CSX Corporation, had entered the property in bankruptcy proceedings. And Jim Justice, now the governor of West Virginia, bought it. But now a legal advertisement says America's Resort is set to go back on the auction block. This development comes after the reported sale of a loan from J.P. Morgan to property management company Beltway Capital. According to Cam Huffman, the Greenbrier's director of public relations, Justice had been paying off debt to J.P. Morgan over the past several years, lowering his balance to around $9.5 million. Huffman writes that the governor was notified July 1st that J.P. Morgan had sold his loan, and now Beltway Capital is commencing foreclosure proceedings against the Greenbrier. Huffman goes on to write the new development is political, saying in part, quote, "This deceitful move by J.P. Morgan is nothing more than the latest political stunt by the Democrats to undermine the next Republican senator from West Virginia." In recent days, J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon's staunch ties to the Democrat Party and his support for the Biden-Harris administration and continued control of the Senate by the Democrats have been well documented, end quote. West Virginia Democrats are pushing back against that claim. Delegate Mike Pushkin, chair of the state Democratic Party, writes in part, quote, "J.P. Morgan's largest political contributions this cycle have gone to the Republican National Committee, $1,127,485. The Democratic Party had nothing to do with the governor's failure to pay his creditors, including the millions owed the state tax department on sales tax receipts from the Greenbrier," end quote.
Thank you for your reporting, Ben. Now, Justice's company's attorney Bob Wolford said in a statement shared with WVVA that the Greenbrier, quote, "will not be sold," adding the Justice family will ensure there's no adverse impact on the resort's ownership or its ability to serve its guests.